Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarian Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's the Travoltis tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winonis tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk.
Have you ever been with a male band?
Who? Me?
That's what I'm running away from. I worked with 6 different ones the last 2 years. Oh, brother.
Rob?
I'll say.
You can't trust those guys.
I can't trust myself. I have this thing about saxophone players, especially tenor sax.
Really?
I don't know what it is, but they just curdle me. All they have to do is play 8 bars of Come to Me, My Melancholy Baby, and my spine turns to custard. I get Goosepimply all over, and I come to them.
That's all?
Every time.
You know, I play tenor sax.
But you're a girl, thank goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Julio, do you sometimes find movies we do to be a bit intimidating, just based on the legacy they have? I mean, at this point, we've done hundreds of these and tackled some of the bigger movies of all time, but, you know, sometimes even just to myself, I feel like I have a standard to live up to, and this movie, I was kind of intimidated by it.
I was not this one. I was intimidated by all the other times that we've tackled Wilder. So I guess 2 on the main feed, and then I did QVR for Sunset Boulevard. This one, because I'd seen it before, even though I remember there was a lot I didn't remember, but I remember the basic stuff, right? And I did remember that they were running away from the mob after witnessing a murder. So I kind of knew that. Here's the thing, like, it's not its status in film history is not what was intimidating to me. The intimidating part was navigating the idea that the whole gag is that they are men dressed as women. And yeah. I usually don't subscribe to the whole, like, oh, you would never make this movie today. Like, anytime that 99.9% of the time when you see somebody online telling you, oh, they would never make this movie today, they're wrong. They would.
It's the Mark Maron thing when he talks about comedians who are like, I'm anti-cancel culture and you can't be funny anymore. It's like, no, you're just a bad comic.
Yep. They might not make it exactly like that, but they would. There's people always talk about the Mel Brooks movie, Blazing Saddles. They're like, you would never make Blazing Saddles today. I was like, I think you would. I don't think it would be, a carbon copy, but the idea of a black sheriff showing up at a racist white town, I mean, that is hilarious. So I don't see how anybody, it might not be, maybe it wouldn't be the same scale. Maybe you wouldn't be able to get the studio backing that Mel Brooks did back then, but I still think that it's something. So generally speaking, I think that people are not giving filmmakers and audiences enough credit when they say, this would never happen. With Some Like It Hot, I think that you have like a bit of a stronger argument, just because now we are trained to be a little more cautious when it comes to this type of humor. And also, like, the novelty is not there anymore. I mean, I find them really funny. Minor spoiler about how I feel about this movie. I think that Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon are really funny. But it's not from the fact that they're dressed as women. It's about the things that happen to them while they're dressed as women, and partly because they're dressed as women. But like you're referencing Contrarian's Corner, part of the comedy back then. It was like, oh, they're dressed as women. So I think that,
but watching it through today's lenses, just kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. I think it's I read it more as like, man, we just got to get the fuck out of here because, the mob's going to kill us. And, it doesn't really ever seem that the joke, it's not like it degrades their characters or tries to say they were so low they had to dress as women or something that.
No. Yeah, no, it's not that. But I don't know that we, by and large, as a society, Alex, I don't think that the joke can just be, oh, here's a man dressed as a woman. Unless it's like, it's more like, oh, here's a man ridiculously dressed as a woman. But then the joke is not that the man is dressed as a woman. It's just that the whole dressing is ridiculous. And so I think that back in 59, as smart as the rest of the movie is, one of the jokes is just that, but isn't it funny that we just put wigs on them and they're dressed as women? And that part is not funny today. And then it's also a more sensitive subject. That's the one part where I would say maybe audiences would be a little more cautious going into it. And maybe even filmmakers would too, which would make it less funny. Because right now it's just such a sensitive subject. And I think, with reason.
And to be clear, it's sensitive on both sides.
Yes. Yeah. But that's why, that would make it to where I feel like the story would feel the need to like overly justify why this is happening. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas like here, they just get into it right away. And there's no second thought. They're dressed as women. They're accepted as women. And then funny stuff happens because of that. I almost feel like if it was remade today, you would need to make in so many excuses to make sure that everything is copacetic with everybody, and if you didn't, it would almost be like, well, why are you even bothering to, just watch some Like It Hot. Because this movie has the advantage of just being able to say, if something doesn't work for you, if you find something a little offensive, you can just say, well, it was 1959, dude, just get over it. It's okay. Yeah. But going back to your original question, that was the part that gave me pause, because I remember that was the engine of the movie. And I'm like, man, is it going to be, how cautious am I going to have to be whenever we're recapping the movie and we're trying to be funny about this? And it turned out to be fine, because I think, as usual, having you to bounce off of takes a lot of the pressure for me. And I made sure that my notes were kind of very specific about the language I wanted to use and all that. So it could also be, Alex, as far as intimidation, that this being our third Billy Wilder on the main feed, I'm a little more comfortable talking about him and his work as a filmmaker. But I don't know. I mean, you tell me, how did you feel going into this?
Just due to its legacy and whatnot. Yeah, it was like, man, how are we going to do this? And also because it's just a movie that I enjoy. And I guess it's kind of easy to make fun of. But I was really struggling to come up with like an angle to hit it at. Mainly because Marilyn Monroe is so good in this. And obviously the two male leads are hysterical. But I think that's what I meant more as the intimidation. Not necessarily like it was a monolith, but more of like, oh, this is too good. How am I going to do this?
It was a welcome revisit for me, because as we mentioned, I think it was when we were doing the apartment episode, we were talking about Wilder's a filmmaker. I mean, this was one that I didn't remember enough of to know with certainty where I placed it in the little ranking of movies of his that I've seen, and how it plays with, the stuff of his that I've seen, how it fits with the other movies. I think it's as funny as The Apartment, and it's as well shot as, Double Indemnity and Sunset Boulevard and, all the other serious movies too. So I think that holds up. If anything, it reminded me, there was like a little bit when we're kind of like in the middle of the movie where I started to feel a little restless. Reminded me of how I started to feel a little restless with The Apartment. And we'll get into that, I think. But overall, it made me happy to just revisit it, and then feeling like, well, now I have very vivid memories and ideas of how I feel about the 4 movies of his that I've watched.
Yeah.
Sunset Boulevard, Double Indemnity, The Apartment, and now Something Like It Hot. They're just branded in my brain as far as, things that I can access. So that was good. I'm glad that you picked it, and that I was able to just, in a way, almost watch it for the first time.
Now, This is 95%, so not a perfect 100. Was the apartment was 100, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unicorn.
So not quite up there. Which reviews did you pull for us that would not agree with the all-time ranking that this movie holds for a lot of people?
How about it, Nellie? Has Polyakov got anything for us? We're desperate.
So at least according to the app, there's only 3 negative reviews. And those 3 are here, or at least they're quotes. So we're going to start with Manny Farber from The New Leader, who says, "Some Like It Hot is a real weirdy. Weirdie. Never heard somebody call something a weirdie, but it's a real weirdie. Wilder gets no laughs at all out of his sizzling fast wedding of female impersonation to 1929 thrills, but from a non-entertainment angle, his movie has a not quite real surface that is worth examining." What?
So a lot of words there to say very little, my friend.
Yeah, you could just say you didn't find it funny. How can you not find this movie funny? That is the big question.
Even just like the lines of, I brought it up in Contrarian's Corner, but where Jack Lemmon falls with a bottle of whiskey and Marilyn Monroe's response is, "How's the bottle?" Like shit like that.
All right. Clyde Gilmer from Maclean's Magazine says, "Genuine hilarity is gradually replaced by boredom and distaste as the one basic gag is stretched out thinner and thinner." I don't think they stretch it out. I mean, obviously they keep going with it, but I think that they throw enough twists and turns to where it never feels like they're just stuck in second or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the last one is David Jenkins from Little White Lies, who says, "Everyone has a canonical classic which they just don't get. This one is mine." Good on you, David. Just taking ownership. Like, I don't get it. It's the Ben Wyatt meme.
Little Sebastian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. I think you get it too, Alex. The question is,
I do.
Do we get it as much as the people that adore this movie? It was funnier than I remembered. I think that the first time I watched this movie, my recollection is that I wasn't laughing as much as I was laughing tonight when I was watching it. And so that was a nice surprise, because I think the first time I watched it, just what I remember is feeling that whole like, oh, it's just them being a dragon. That's just not funny. And now it shouldn't have surprised me. And I guess it didn't, because of The Apartment, which we did recently. I already had in my mind how gifted Jack Lemmon can be when it comes to physical comedy.
Yeah.
And watching him play the bass every time that they were playing music in this movie, I fucking loved it. Especially when...
dude, that's one of the first big laughs of the movie, when he's watching Marilyn Monroe dance and he's trying to twirl his bass. Yes. And he ends up just holding it backwards and playing it.
It's just so funny, because at first they're playing, and I was still laughing when they were just playing normal, and then the lady, what's it called, Big Sue, Evil Sue,
Sweet Sue
says, "Put your back on it." Just make it a little spicier. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they start playing with more flair. And God, I was dying. Kelly was in the kitchen and she kind of like popped in to look because I was laughing so much. That was just physical comedy. And so that stuff is just priceless. That's the kind of thing that I would think is universal. Like, even if you don't think that the story is funny, just watching these guys being funny while playing their instruments, I would think that would work for everybody.
The funniest thing in the movie to me, surprisingly, didn't even have Jack Lemmon or Tony Curtis involved. It's when the mob first gets to the hotel in Miami and the police chief from Chicago walks up and he's like, "Where were you last Friday or whatever, last Tuesday?" And he said, "Rigoletto's." He goes, "First name." He goes, "That's an opera, you ignoramus."
The callback to that made me laugh really hard when they're at the meeting where they eventually get killed, but because I guess he's trained all his flunkies to say the same thing, that they were with him at Rigoletto's.
Yes.
They're like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, the two guys, they gave us the slip," and then he turns and is like, "Where were you? I was with you at Rigoletto." Marilyn Monroe, I think that we need to talk about her first because we talked about her at length when we covered the Misfits on Patreon. But that was a very different Marilyn Monroe. It was a very different performance, and it was a very different actress in a way because she was, well, I don't know how much time had passed since this movie. In my mind, that's like Marilyn Monroe being really tired, and I mean, it works for the movie and for that performance, but it's not, the energy is very different from what she's giving us here.
The Misfits was 1961, and this movie was 1959.
Man, but it's
night and day.
Yeah. I mean, there's acting, but also there's a weariness to her character. As I was watching it, I think she's wonderful, but I found that I was having trouble separating the performance from the legend. And I kind of referenced it a little bit in Contreras Corner, just the idea that now we have a very specific idea of what the Marilyn Monroe stereotype is.
Yeah.
And then you watch her in a movie like this, and that's exactly what it is. The voice, the way that she delivers the dialogue, even the character being kind of an airhead, and obviously her sexuality being a focus of the movie, of the plot. It's just everything. It works because I think she's talented, she's got the looks, and you got a good filmmaker making use of all these things. But it wasn't like when we watched the Misfits, I was like, oh, this is very much not what I'm used to when I think of Marilyn Monroe. And here it was like, it's pretty much exactly that.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, but it's something that kind of distracts you from what everybody else is doing. As the movie went on, it kind of got a little better. And I just got out of my head about it. But I haven't seen as many Marilyn Monroe movies as I should. And I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot more than I have. So I'm guessing you didn't have that problem. How do you feel about her performance here?
Yeah, this is Marilyn Monroe. This is like the Marilyn Monroe show. There's that little edge to her that's a little more heartbreaking than some of her other movies. That obviously not to the like you said, the extent of the Misfits or something, but like, I think like Gentlemen's Prefer Blondes and how goofy she is in that. And she's obviously is a bit ditzy, I think is the word you would use to describe her in this. But she still has like, there's moments she has of real emotion and real like that make her feel real human in this. And I think it's like a cauldron of sorts. It's a combination of what made her so special. And I think her performance is really memorable in this in that way.
If you see anybody else doing something like this, then you're like, oh, well, she's just trying to be Marilyn Monroe. That's just...
Yeah. I mean, we talk about it from time to time when we come across, actors like this. People didn't and don't look like Marilyn Monroe. And also that she was just one of one. The way she could deliver lines and how she could look delivering them. And it's, you're right. She had such a style that's not even like, it can be parodied, but it's not, it's not like, we wouldn't say rewatching Marilyn Monroe movies. We wouldn't like jokingly say like we do about Pacino movies, like, oh, he's going off Pacino style now. We wouldn't be like, oh, here comes Marilyn. It's just, she was a special talent, and it's weird to see those numbers side by side. The, Misfits was so close to this, and she even like her physical appearance, she was still beautiful, but like looked like she had aged 10 years in between the two,
I had the most wonderful dream. I was still on the yacht and the anchor broke loose. We drifted for days and days. You were the captain and I was the crew. I kept a lookout for icebergs. I sorted your shells and mixed your cocktails, and I wiped the steam off your glasses.
Did it put you off when she pulls a flask and starts drinking?
Yeah, no, that's I'm pretty good about removing situations like that. I think I bring it up. I remember there was some story about a test screening that The Dark Knight had, where the audience said that they should remove that scene where the Joker is carried in and the audience is meant to believe he's a dead body because Heath Ledger just died. And I can't speak for everybody, obviously, and I'm not going to, and I don't want to. It's not my story to tell. But situations like that, I am fairly decent at removing myself from crossing the stream, so to speak. And, it's you look at her character here, like that scene in The Dark Knight, for example. If you got that scene out, there's a big part of the story that develops through that. So you'd be missing that. And like Marilyn Monroe's character here, if I said, man, watching it now, I really don't want that, alcoholic part to her character. I wish that wasn't there. I do want it there because it makes her character whole and explains who she is. So that's not how everyone can look at these things. Not everyone can watch a movie where, I don't know, what's that Judith Barcy thing we talked about. Remember? Like, I know there's people that can't watch fucking movies with her in it. And obviously that's a very extreme example of something like this, but it's a thing that I have the ability to kind of separate. So, long answer to your short question. No, I didn't have much of a problem with that.
I didn't either, but it did cross my mind.
I mean, that's natural. I had thoughts about it too. It was like, well, now hold on. Jack Lemmon's dancing again.
But I think it's partly because the tragedy of her story is in real life, the tragedy of her life. It's just so well known. Even if you don't know the details, I think that by, generally speaking, most people know that it didn't end well, that she had problems with substance abuse and so on. So it doesn't ruin the movie for me. I don't think it makes it funny. Maybe it takes some of the humor out of the fact that, she's a low-key alcoholic in this movie, but it's not, it's not a deal breaker. It just can't help it. That's just part of her legacy as a performer, just like everybody else that we've been talking about, the voice and the dancing and the way that she dresses and all that stuff. I think, speaking of that potential impossible remake of Some Like It Hot, I think that her character would need some major retooling. I don't think that you can tell this story again where her character is just looking for a rich man. At least not in the way that she's doing it here, where it's just so, I wouldn't say without malice, right? I think that if you redid Some Like It Hot, her character would be a little more cunning.
Mm-hmm.
And because again, kind of like what I said in Gutierrez Corner, right? She gets to the end of the movie and she's never really bested anyone. And you would expect her to, because that would be kind of just. That's what would be fair in a comedy, in a standard journey for this character. That she would learn to love herself, and through that, she would just tell some guy that's trying to take advantage of her, she would tell him what's what. But instead, what happens is she decides to give a guy that had been taking advantage of her another shot. And that's not as powerful for her. And I don't think that would fly today. I think that it would annoy more people. That's something that, again, you can point to 1959 and say, well, for the time, this was fine. But I don't think that you can write those type of characters now. You'd be called out as like, oh, what, do you think you're in the 50s? It's 2025 now. But she's great. And it's probably, like I said when we talked about the Misfits, it's made me want to check out more of her work.
Yeah, you need to see Gentlemen's Prefer Blondes. That movie's fantastic. I know I say that every time, but that's honestly one where I would say that Marilyn's not like the star of the show there. Jane Russell's fantastic. Anyway, back to the lecture at hand. Yeah, if you wrote a female character like this in 2025, people would be like, what are you, Judd Apatow? So, now, who do we, no, that's unfair. Nolan. We always joke about Nolan doesn't know how to write female characters. Nolan's getting it from all angles here. I didn't even mean for that to happen.
Rob Zombie.
But
who are you, Rob Zombie?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, there you go. Well, the problem is if you wrote a character like Marilyn Monroe in this, like if Rob Zombie wrote her, she would meet the billionaire she was going to marry and then like on the way to his apartment get kidnapped and brutally tortured and beaten for an hour. That's what would happen in Rob Zombie's Gentlemen's Don't Prefer Blondes or something like that. I think that's a big part of it. Marilyn Monroe's movies, you think of, the 7-Year Itch, the subway grate, with the skirt blowing up. She has all these iconic images and line deliveries, and Misfits, obviously she's sharing the screen with Clark Gable, but and I just mentioned Gentlemen's for Blondes, which is like a co-lead, and she does a good amount of those, but she obviously has her movies that she was the star of. And with this, it's like, I have not seen her entire filmography, from cover to cover, but I've seen a good amount to, in my opinion, say that this movie combines all the things she was really good at with sharing with two other like really good performances as well. And no one, even like the side players in this, no one's bad. That's something to establish. But like her chemistry also with Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, I feel is really good. Particularly some of the scenes with Jack Lemmon, I feel like just the way they play off of each other is quite great. So I can understand why this is so celebrated the way it is. I would have to, again, finish out the movies I haven't seen and fine-tooth comb it. But I think this movie is just like her performance mixed with the other parts of it it's why it's so well known. It's the best of what she could offer as like an on-screen presence mixed with like a good movie. Also, the hotel they're at, I've been there before. I have a little mini poster I took from there that had a picture of Marilyn Monroe on the beach there when they were filming it.
Oh God, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's not black and white, but it's really nice. It's in California, by the way, not Florida.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes more sense. Something else that crossed my mind was just that, like, the movie doesn't objectify her as as other movies would. Actresses like her in around that time and even now, right? But it does use her appearance up to a point to move the story along and to have some gags. And probably the most overt is that shot of her ass as she's walking, like her introduction. And I was just like, all right. I mean,
I need to rewatch that scene so we can get the verbiage right about what they said about the Jell-O and the mechanism inside of it.
Look at that! Look how she moves. That's just like Jell-O on springs. Must have some sort of built-in motor or something.
I think it's kind of funny because you see the reactions from them and the dialogue that it prompts, and it's that kind of thing. And then I was like, all right, so this still happens. I know because, we kind of call it out, or we know because it's just, that's the world. But I can't think of, right away, off the top of my head, I couldn't think of comedies today that use sexuality in that way, in a funny way. And of course, it's just because, it was a spur of the moment thought. So, I mean, I'm sure, give me some time, let me Google stuff and I can come up with something. Just recently, I was editing and I had the Baywatch movie playing. Not one of the TV movies, but the one with The Rock and Zac Efron. It was playing in the background on Tubi. And so I kept glancing up and just seeing, what was happening. I'd never seen it before. And a lot of the movie's visual comedy is like, oh, well, here are these really hot women in bikinis. And that's just what we're doing. We have shots of their cleavage and shots of their butts and shots of them running and whatever. And
do you remember the Dukes of Hazzard movie with Sean William Scott and Johnny Knoxville?
Jessica Simpson, right?
Yes. That movie was directed by J. Chandra Sekhar, by the way, which always is weird to me. Anyway, I don't know how much you remember about like the marketing for that, but it was just like all Jessica Simpson in a bikini or in Daisy Dukes with like a cutoff top. And she did that cover of that Dolly Parton song, These Boots Are Made for Walking, the promotion for it. And the music video is just like her washing the General Lee in a bikini. And, that was peak, not even trying to say it has some artistic merit. I don't know if that plays into the point you're trying to make at all, but it does.
It does.
Okay.
Because I was hoping you would have like examples, because I was just really running up short. I was thinking, oh, how fortuitous that I happened to have Baywatch on a few days ago, because that gives me something that I can, at least point to and say, okay, this is how you do it when you're doing it wrong, right? I think you can use attractive people as a point of comedy, like where their assets, so to speak, their physical appearance can be comedic without it coming across as tasteless or gratuitous or exploitative, right? The Baywatch movie is not it. which was like, oh, we know we have these hot actors and actresses, and so we're just going to do the slow motion. And we have the perfect excuse because we can say that we're just a parody of what the TV show used to be, but at the same time, it's not like that's really adding anything. You know, it's mostly there for audience to go like, man, she's hot or he's hot or whatever, right? Now jump back to 1959, and you have a very attractive woman who is very talented, right? She can sing, she can act, she's like the whole package in a way, right? But she is kind of in this box where, because she's so attractive, if you see her in a movie, that's something that's going to be the focus of the movie at some point, if not through the entire movie. And so this happens in Some Like It Hot, where you have her introduction. It's like, oh, look at her butt. And then there's a couple of shots when they're in the train where she's just like leaning forward. And I was like, it's not like they give us a close-up of the cleavage, but she's there, and it's just very noticeable that, like, it's not accidental, right? If you're a director like Billy Wilder, you know exactly how you're framing things. And my thought was, yes, she's gorgeous, and we already made that point. Is this shot for us? Is this shot for the investors? Is this shot because, you know, it's a Marilyn Monroe movie, and this is what is expected, that we need to highlight her body? I was thinking about that. And I was like also thinking, how exhausting for her to just, you know, it makes me understand or underlines why she's so tired by the time she gets to the Misfits. And the Misfits doesn't do that. The Misfits, I mean, treats her character as an attractive woman, but it never, at least not that I remember, it never really goes for those shots where the whole point is showing you her body, right?
No. I mean, Julio, I don't know how much you recall, but tonally, that's a much different film.
Yeah. But
well, it's also like part of the Marilyn Monroe story as well, is that she was a full-figured woman. And it's like they, you know, the people wanted their cake and eat it too. Want to be able to show off your full figure, but don't get too big. Yeah. You're not desirable anymore. You know, that is not exclusive to Marilyn Monroe. There's been plenty of actresses that or just normal women that we want you to be beautiful, but you know.
There is a shot in the Misfits, Alex. I just remembered. I don't remember how graphic it is, but remember they're at that bar, and she's playing with that paddle. She's kind of like broken the record, and one of the cowboys around there starts looking at her ass and does some sort of gesture that is lewd, and then that's how they get into a fight. And do you remember that?
There's also, I can't remember the details of it. Something to do with the way they shot it, where she gets out of bed. Do you see her breasts? Like there's like some sort of, like there was like a bit of controversy of the way it was filmed versus
she wanted to be topless. I think that's
what it was.
Yeah, she wanted to be topless, and the director was like, no, we don't need it. And so they shot it, but then the final cut doesn't include it. So she has the sheet is covering her. I mean, it's very different from what we're talking about, but it's still
also this is the point in the conversation where we check in and make sure it's known that it you know, the definition of irony is two straight men like dissecting the way women are presented and stuff like that. But you know,
well, because we're two straight men that just watched a movie that features an actress that is kind of well known for having been treated that way, you know, in her movies.
Not being dramatic, a literal sex god.
Yes. I mean, that's her part of her legacy, right? The Playboy cover, the
7-year itch, the subway grate where her dress blows up and stuff.
Subway grate, all that stuff. So that's something else. I know that the next Marilyn Monroe movie that I watch, because, you know, we're having this conversation because it's already in my head, but also because we're having this conversation, the next one I watch, it's also going to be a little more highlighted. Whenever something like that happens, I'll be like, oh, there we go. There's the shot of her butt, or there's the shot that highlights her body, and so on. It's not that it's necessarily bad. I mean, it can be. I think it serves the story in Some Like It Hot. But much like we're saying about everything else related to Marilyn Monroe, because it comes, you know, you just have that baggage when you're watching her on screen.
I've really been trying to think of the last time I saw a movie that had that, you know, what we call the male gaze, and which is good. That, like, I'm racking my brain. I also watched, as is well documented, like about 5 new releases a year at this point. So I don't know. There may be some, but yeah, it's we're a far cry from the Jessica Simpson days of just titty ass. And then, oh, you want a line of dialogue? All right, we'll say, oh, griddle spits. I spilled some soap on myself.
Thank God for Baywatch, because it made me, because I was starting to wonder, was like, are they gone? Do we just not do this anymore? Because that's great. And then I was like, no. I just saw it. It happened under the Rock's watch, no less.
No, I believe it. And also, we've moved far past it, but in my mind, I immediately went, Dolly Parton didn't write Boots Made for Walking. In my head, it was Dolly Parton and Loretta Lynn came to mind immediately, and I was wrong on both fronts. It was Nancy Sinatra. So there you go.
There you go. It's the correction. We made it long enough that you were able to slide in the correction. Speaking of songs, Alex, the final song that she sings,
performed by Nancy Sinatra. She probably didn't write it. It was probably records were made differently then. Anyway, I'm sorry, Julio. Go ahead.
We're gonna go down the rabbit hole of tracking the real origins.
Lee Hazelwood. I have it right
here. All right. Okay, now tell me, who wrote "I'm Through with Love," which is this song that she sings at the end, that before Tony Curtis goes in and kisses her. Because that's a cover, right? That's not that they wrote that song for the movie.
I'm Through with Love or I'm Through with Love. Oh, two different spellings. It's a jazz standard written by Gus Kahn, Matty Malneck, Fudd Livingston. Fudd, F-U-D. What a name. It was first recorded in 1931 by Henry Bussey and his orchestra with vocal refrain from Richard Berry. It was recorded the same year by Bing Crosby. Where are we getting where we need to go here, boys? There's a renowned version sung by actress Marilyn Monroe, the 1959 film Some Like It Hot. So there you go.
There you go. Well, I knew that song because in Everyone Says I Love You, which is the one musical Woody Allen has directed, that is a song. I mean, that musical is made up of covers. Like all the songs are just people singing classic songs. And I'm Through with Love is one that several characters sing. It's kind of it becomes a running joke because at some point the whole movie is just, it's a relationship movie and people kind of getting together and breaking up and whatever. And so whenever they're feeling down, one of them would break into song and they go like, start singing I'm Through with Love. And so that's how I knew it. And even though I have watched Something Like It Hot before, I didn't remember that that's the song that Marilyn Monroe sings. In fact, I might have watched it before I watched Everyone Says I Love You, so I never made the connection. But the thing with Everyone Says I Love You is that there's no, they just got the actors that they had and they sing and they're not trying to be great singers. They're just singing, like regular people do.
Feelings and I'm through with love. I'll never fall again. What are you saying? You're 14 years old. You'll fall again.
Oh, you guys, I am so sorry. I thought that you'd be happy for me. I hope in time you understand.
I'm through with love.
What are you singing about? You're not in love with Holden, are you?
So now here we come to the climax of Something Like It Hot, and I hear I'm Through with Love, and now it seems like a professional singer is singing it. And it was wonderful. I was like, hey, I know that song, but it didn't sound this great. She does it justice. It really caught my attention. But it also made me feel like, man, another musical number. Those old movies, I think it's like maybe the 50s. That's when they were doing that a lot, where the movie just stops so they can have a bit of a musical performance. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like it happens here. I want to say 3 times, right? It happens in the train.
Well, 2, like she gets boop boop be do that musical. Yes. I wanna be loved by you. Yeah, just in a fucking resplendent dress. Yeah, that's great.
That's when they get the flowers, right? That's when Jack Lemmon and right that's not on the train. That's when they're in Florida.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. They've already they've started their residency at the hotel.
Yes, yeah. So she sings another one on the train when they're first.
That is Running Wild. That's where she like fucking actually plays the ukulele.
Yeah. And then she does that one at the end. I'm Through with Love, and I like it. That makes a movie feel old timey for me, which is funny because we watch our share of Indian movies, and that's what makes them feel just like Indian movies, right? That they have their musical numbers, and when they're not there, it feels a little off. But here, if we're talking about American cinema, something that always takes me back to like the good old days, or at least the olden days, is when they just kind of felt the need to have a musical number there. Because all three of the songs here, they didn't really need to be full productions, right? The plot could have just kind of continued while there was some music going on in the background, but you didn't need for the movie to stop and show us the performance. But that's what happens, and it works. There are movies where I find it a little like it kills the momentum, right? Like the story's going and then suddenly we stop.
It's a very, if Julio, you'll indulge me and allow me to talk about how great Inside Llewyn Davis is for a moment.
Fantastic example of it being done in modern cinema.
That's a fascinating movie in that there's so much just like tension and, kind of doom and gloom, because that movie's obviously about this guy whose life's not working out the way he thought. But it builds to all those individual moments of, for the majority of that movie, when there's a musical number, that the song and the performance is the central focus of the scene. And it's usually like comes across as just like so pure. And the one time it doesn't really is that part where he flips out on the old couple he lives with. And that leads to like, a bit of a downfall for him. But yeah, it's, I know what you mean by saying that. Sometimes musical numbers seem just kind of thrown into a movie arbitrarily. It's the best scene in the movie, but we've covered it on the podcast. The musical number for All These Things I Have Done in Southland Tales. Talk about something that just felt shoehorned in for no reason. It's like, all right. It'd be like in this if Billy Wilder was like, all right, we're going to bring this all to a screeching halt. And I'm trying to think of like, and we're just going to watch Marilyn make broccoli cheddar soup for 5 minutes while she, what would be like a Chuck Berry song that she could sing? Run, Run, Rudolph or some shit.
I think part of it is also that her performance makes it worth it. And also today in 2025, you watch it happen and you just treasure it.
She's so mesmerizing.
Yeah. And even then, I mean, back in 59 or whatever, I think that you probably would have been disappointed, maybe, right? It's like, wait, so she plays ukulele and she sings, but we're not really going to see it happen in the movie?
Yeah.
So, no, give me those musical numbers.
Speaking of musical numbers real quick, I recently, with the SNL 50 thing, there was stuff everywhere. And I came across something that not only had I never seen it, I never knew it happened. And it was when the one and only time John Travolta hosted, which was in 1994 to promote Pulp Fiction. And they do the ending where, it's like he's thanking everyone and the SNL band starts playing. And the musical guest was Seal. So he's like, I want to thank Seal and everybody here. And 1984 is in this really weird spot of transition where like Sandler and Chris Farley and Jeanine Garofalo and like those folks, Tim Meadows are there, but it's kind of bridging into like the next generation. 95 is when Will Ferrell started. So anyway, he's like, thank you for everybody. Have a great night. And then Jeanine Garofalo like comes to the forefront and she says, but John, what are we going to do after the show? And then Chris Farley's like, yeah, what if we never see each other again? And John Travolta's like, oh, that'll never happen. And they go, well, how do you know? He goes, a wampa baluba. And then the entire SNL cast there to send the show off the air starts performing the We Go Together song from the end of Grease. And like they're dancing like in unison and doing like the dance from Grease and shit. And Seal's doing it too. And then like they all kind of do like this number where they all dance past the camera. And then by the time it ends up back on the stage, they have this big prop of Travolta and Seal in like the pink Cadillac. And Seal has since put on this huge blonde wig and they film it like they fly off to end the show. I was in awe watching it. And like, I'll have to find it and send it to you because you'll notice that clearly like Farley and Sandler and Spade like had watched Grease, like I guess in preparation for it, because they start doing the dance moves that like some of the extras we called out were doing, like when we watched the actual movie. It's so fucking good. And also Steve Buscemi was there because he had like a guest appearance on the show, so he's just kind of dancing in the background too. It's unbelievable.
Wow, that's amazing.
Nothing to do with Some Like It Hot, but it came to mind when I was thinking of recent musical numbers that I watched.
Does that mean you played that very fast music, jazz?
Yeah, real hot.
Oh, well, I guess some like it hot. I personally prefer classical music.
We talked about Marilyn Monroe, though, at length. We've done our due diligence for her. Real quick, because I don't want to put this in the YouTube thing, because this will lead to just kind of possibly meandering discussion. But one of the things on the Wikipedia page here that I found very interesting was the production code had been gradually weakening in its scope since the early 50s, owing to greater social tolerance for taboo topics in film. Of course, the code that, the pre-code days, the Wild West of the 20s and such, the 30s, where you end up with movies like Freaks. The Hays Code had come into effect since, which I always can never really explain how that worked. It wasn't like a rating system like we eventually became used to, but it was a list of basically no, can't do this. But the overwhelming success of Some Like It Hot considered one of the major reasons behind the retirement of the code. It remained in effect till the mid-60s, but, I guess this does tie into John Travolta, because we talked about the importance that Saturday Night Fever had towards making like a PG-13 rating. And so I just found that interesting, because even, we talked about the things that can be interpreted as kind of problematic by modern standards, and also kind of some of the confusing messaging, if you want to read into it too far, that's there. But there's nothing in this movie that, some guys get gunned down. But besides that, there's nothing like shocking. But it is interesting that this movie being successful made the then, for lack of a better term, ratings board kind of reconsider what we were doing.
Well, I wonder if the idea that even dare to say, hey, Jack Lemmon and
Osgood,
that Jack Lemmon and Osgood would have this relationship that, it starts in like, he thinks he's a woman and so on. But then they're suddenly shown having a really good time together. And then, tell me how you read it. I know this is dangerously close to overthinking the very silly plot of Something Like It Hot. But Jack Lemmon is not just doing it for the money, right? Like I read the movie as he had a really good time with Osgood. And that's part of why he's just okay accepting the proposal.
It's a little thing you kind of have to be paying attention to. Well, it starts off funny. He's like, start packing. And first thing he packs is the flowers Osgood got for him. And Tony Curtis like, not that.
Yeah.
But if you pay attention to that, he grabs his maracas to pack them, and he starts like dancing to himself. And it's like fucking in I Love You, Man, when Paul Rudd, the morning of his wedding, he's standing out there and he starts just air basing to himself very solemnly. Like, that's exactly what this is here, is that, whether it's sexual or not, he really had a good time with Osgood. And it's he may have found a part of himself that he, that was unlocked, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, but I think that's, going back to the code, maybe that is something that at some point they would have told you, no, you can't show this.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And that, of course, is a segue to the ending, which, God, it's so good. But like you said, I could easily see people that went and saw it going, wait, what? Hold on. Which it's such a fascinating line, because like the go home that both these guys hit, yes, Tony Curtis ends up with Marilyn Monroe. But it is fascinating that two of the big closing lines of this movie reference men in kind of a not derogatory way, but he tells Marilyn Monroe when she's crying that no guy is worth it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the last line of this movie is nobody's perfect. And I don't know. Now I'm reading too far into it, but I thought it was interesting that they kind of rightfully so, this movie kind of exists to throw dudes under the bus at the end, which does make the whole idea of Marilyn Monroe just accepting him confusing. But at the same time, I think the movie does an interesting little twist there at the end.
I think the movie, I think she accepts this at the end because that's what the convention was. And I don't think Billy Wilder set out to reinvent the wheel with this one. He was just like, let's just have fun. And the formula requires that they're going to be together at the end. It's unfortunate that it really, her character, it's not allowed to find, even if you want them to end together. I wish that there was something else that she had done. I mean, it's a really good line but that's him changing, right? Like him going and revealing himself to her and telling her that no man is worth it. That's like great for him, but for the character of Marilyn, it's just like she was just handed some wisdom from a dude, and I mean that's fine. It's still, you're watching the movie, you're having a good time, and really you're kind of happy, at least partially, that they're still together. The four of them, I think that's also the fact that it's the four of them on that boat just going away makes it a little easier to get on with it, because it's like, okay, they work, it looks like it's so much more fun that it's the four of them.
You like the last line of the movie though?
I do. I think it's really funny. I find it funnier now. That is you and listeners may know, like I can be very guilty of overthinking things, and I think the first time I watched Some Like It Hot, that was something that happened where he said, well, nobody's perfect, and then the end, and my reaction was like, wait, but then what happens? It just, because, so are they still gonna get married in 1959? Now I just watched it, I was like, that's great. That's just so, like, Jack Lemmon's reaction, and Osgood looks so happy. He's just so completely unaffected by anything that's been said. It's great. Tony Curtis, Alex, we talked about it right before we started recording, and you kind of referenced it. We haven't really had him in a movie on the show before, and honestly, I don't even know if I've seen him in any movies before, any other movies. How familiar are you with him as an actor?
Probably just more in name than actual like work, I would say.
I think that's the case for me too. I am curious if this is kind of like what he played usually, right? Do you feel like he gets overshadowed? I mean, he does great. Again, that
I actually think he's really funny. One of the hardest jokes I laughed at in the movie was when he gets, like, he's hiding in the bathtub, or like pretending that he's soaking in the tub to keep up the ruse that he's Josephine, or is that yeah. And then when Marilyn leaves the room, he gets up out of it and he's like in his suit from when he was pretending to be the oil tycoon or whatever, the heir, excuse me. And he just gets out and starts just walking like into the room, like he's covered in like bubbles and suds and just dripping water everywhere. That made me laugh really hard.
What? Joe, don't look at me like that when it was all a joke, when I didn't mean any harm. What? I'm going to press the suit myself.
I think I found him funnier in the first half of the movie before he starts pursuing Marilyn Monroe, when he's just kind of the one that's taking this seriously, and Jack Lemmon is more of the wild card in the train.
He had that, and then, yeah, I agree with you, but he had that incredible moment where when he runs into Daphne and Marilyn introduces the two of them and says, she's a Vassar girl. And Daphne's like, huh? He's like, I heard a horrible story about a Vassar girl.
Yes.
Tattled on her roommate and ended up dead, something to that effect. I thought that was great.
Yes. I think that Lemmon gets more comedy, though. Or is it just
yes,
that maybe
because he's also funnier.
Yeah. All the dancing, the whole tango sequence, right? Like, and he keeps cutting back and forth. And every time it cut to Jack Lemmon, I would bust out laughing. And then it would cut back to Marilyn Monroe kissing Tony Curtis and him trying to act like he was not being affected by it. There's a part in
that, in that montage, if you want to call it that, the back and forth where they cut to the restaurant or wherever they are, and it's shut down because they have like the chairs stacked on top of the tables and shit. And Jack Lemmon's just standing in the middle and like dancing, and Osgood's dancing around him. It's wonderful.
Yeah, Jack Lemmon. I think he proved to Billy Wilder that he was ready for the apartment. He's like, okay, and the next one, I don't need a sidekick. Just let me take care of it myself. Again, nothing against Tony Curtis. I laughed a lot with some of his stuff there, but mostly when it was him and Jack Lemmon. Whenever they got split, I found Lemmon funnier, and him trying to trick Marilyn Monroe, I didn't find as funny.
Before we get out of here, got to get this out of the way. Used to be better. The cinematography, the filming, the lighting in this movie is just unbelievable. The way Marilyn Monroe is lit when the shots are just like of her speaking, the way all the sequences on the beach were filmed were just fucking phenomenal. There was an art to the way we used to do things, dude. I fucking Liar was on TV the other night. And I was like, look at the fucking way these shots are framed and lit, just compared to like modern, like, you know, the fucking straight to streaming service dreck that we're dealt all the time now. So of course you go back and watch something like this. You're like, my God, there was an art to it, brother.
I know we've talked about this before, probably with The Apartment, if not with The Apartment, whenever we've done another black and white movie. But do you think this would benefit from being in color? So obviously Billy Wilder made the decision to have it black and white.
No.
Why not?
And this is the same in Misfits also. The Misfits, I can't remember the exact technical differences they made, but it's clear the shots of Marilyn Monroe, like her headshots and like where it's her just speaking, specifically when they first meet her, they use like different lighting and different, I don't know if they use a different lens, but it looks different than every other thing in the movie. It's kind of fuzzy around the edges and shit because it's like, oh my God, you're supposed to feel like you're in a dream sequence. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is an example of a Marilyn Monroe film that's in color, and that is in color, brother. That thing is like popping everywhere you go. It's like Wizard of Oz, like boom. These dresses are the pinkest dresses you've ever seen in your life, that type of shit. A movie like this, maybe it could be, but I'm blinded by my nostalgia for an era that I never lived through to just think this is the way it was meant to be.
Like, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't colorize it, right? But I am curious how it plays in color. My first thought of, I guess, relevance would be that maybe it's even harder to believe that Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon are passing as women if you see them in color. Maybe in black and white, it's a little easier to just go with the conceit of the movie, which is that nobody bats an eye and that Marilyn Monroe never recognizes Tony Curtis and so on. I don't think that that's why Wilder did it. I think he just liked black and white.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to be proven wrong. This is just me having watched 4 black and white movies of his, but that's something, you know, but I'm thinking because it's such a happy movie and it's the musical
numbers. At this point too, you have to question like if it was easier to get a movie made if you told the studio it would be in black and white as opposed to color.
Oh, like cheaper?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, Wizard of Oz it had been 20 years, so yeah, I think I'm with you. I think it might have just been an artistic decision on his part.
All right. Well, let's give our scores, Alex. This has been a very fun conversation, but it's time to get to the cold hard facts. What's your grade for Some Like It Hot?
So, full transparency, very, very good. It is not as good as The Apartment. The Apartment has like this human edge to it that is very relatable and like really makes that a perfect movie. I gave that like the Apartment to me is a 5-star film. Like that's A+, the highest accolades I can give it. This is great though. So I'm giving this. I'm gonna go with an A. I was gonna say A- initially because on this watch, I felt that some of the stuff in the yacht kind of dragged, but then it kind of comes around. So I'm fine. I don't think anyone who's in this is worried about my score being an A- or an A, but I'm going to go with a dead center A. So translate to 4.5 stars, somewhere in that territory. What about yourself?
4 stars. 4 stars. I think I probably gave The Apartment 4 stars as well. I had more trouble with the tonal changes in that one, right? I thought that they had a very, very funny, very comedic setup, and then it kind of got very serious when Shirley MacLaine tried to commit suicide. I agree, it's a great movie though. And this one, that's not the problem. I think that I kind of mentioned it at the very beginning of this conversation. Then we were not talking about other things. And I think that the mobster stuff is not as captivating as everything else that's happening. And I don't know what it is. I think that maybe it's just that it would be better off if the mobsters were just complete faceless threats and you didn't try to give him like all this backstory, because there's like a whole thing that's happening with the gangsters. Like, oh, well, they killed Charlie, so now they're going to kill this guy in revenge and we're going to set up a whole plot. It was like, just make it that they watched a murder and then they're being pursued by the mobsters and then the mobsters show up again and then they run again. Because I was never as interested in what was happening when it was just gangsters being gangsters, even with some of the funny lines they get. I wanted more Jack Lemmon, more Tony Curtis, more Marilyn Monroe, even more Osgood. And so when the gangsters become a big part of the story again towards the end, I was like, ah. But still, great movie. I recommend it. I laughed so much watching it.
Yeah.
So that's always good. Yeah, 4 stars.
Well, nobody's perfect.
All right, Julio. Well, that wraps it up for Some Like It Hot of National Film Registry and Criterion fame. You know, it's a hell of a accolade to live up to. So does our next movie do so? What's on deck next?
Well, according to the Academy and Rotten Tomatoes, it does. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Alex Mattis's heart will say. Regardless, it's time to pay the piper, as they say. We did some good deeds last year, as we try to do every year when we participated in the live stream for the cure and we raised some money for cancer research. And we hit 2 of our goals. And goal number 1 was the 3 from Hell episode that will be coming pretty soon. But before that, we're going to hit up goal number 2, which was Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. I want to say very popular remake from Señor Spielbergo from a few years ago. Got a lot of Oscar nominations, maybe only 1 win that I can think of. But overall, the main thing was that there was a fun thing to dangle for our Live Stream for the Cure donors, because I'm sure that when they donated, they could just imagine how Alex flinched every time that we got closer and closer to watching a 2 hour and 40-minute remake of West Side Story, starring, among other people, Ansel Elgort, Baby Driver himself. It's fresh, Alex, so at least you get to say really mean things about it in Contrarian's Corner.
I'm sure it'll be a hoot one way or the other.
It should be fun. So that's coming up next on the main feed. On the Patreon feed, our bonus episode for March is The Voyage of the Demeter, the fragment of the Dracula novel expanded to feature length. That was not really demanded by Jordan Mans, but suggested by Jordan Mans during our 10th year anniversary episode. So every now and then we'll take a suggestion, just a suggestion instead of a demand. It's a little nicer. So that's what we're doing on the Patreon feed, available to all patrons. Then on QVRs, we are doing the movie Strange Darling. That's a dual QVR. So Alex and I will be watching it, pausing, discussing, finishing it. And then for After Hours, Alex, what are we doing for Contrarians After Hours this time?
For myself, Julio, I'm bringing a first-time watch to the table. I recently watched The Birdcage for the first time, the 90s film starring Robin Williams, Nathan Lane, amongst others. The recently departed Gene Hackman is in there as well. Just one of those movies I had never seen. And be discussing my feelings. It's got to be 30 years old at this point. That was like, what, 94, 95?
Yeah.
96, excuse me.
96? Yeah, I guess that makes sense. On my end, Alex, I watched the Oscar nominee for Best Original Screenplay. I think it's original. September 5th. And then I also watched the movie Men, Women, and Children, which is kind of a really late follow-up to our Labor Day episode. That's literally the movie that Jason Reitman made after Labor Day.
Yes.
And it's just another block in the Jason Reitman filmography that I can just take care of. And now I think the only thing that he's done that I haven't watched are the new Ghostbusters movies. And I got to tell you, not in a hurry to do those, but at least now I can say that I've watched everything except those. But that's it for the After Hours. That's it for the QVRs and for a bonus episode. If any of that sounds interesting, patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. That's where you find the good stuff. Now let's get out of here, Alex.
Let's do it. Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com, and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarian sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Coriari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
Just for old time's sake, I really don't care who you're seeing or how much money you make together.